Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our Women and Girls Match Fund webinar. We'll give it a minute just to let everyone join and then we'll get started. Hi to everyone who's just joining us now. It is 12:01, so we'll get straight in. A big welcome to Women and Girls Match Fund webinar. On the call today, I have Sahil from the Big Give team and then Caitlin and Rachel from IG Advisors. I'm just going to go through a few house rules. Please do use the chat function throughout the webinar. If you set it to everyone, you can introduce yourself, share ideas, and share any tech issues with us. During the webinar, you'll be able to raise your hand. This is if you'd like to ask a question live during the webinar, and we'll be opening that up at the end so you can ask those questions. In the case you don't want to ask your question live, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Just pop in your question there and we'll answer that at the end of the session. There'll be a few live polls that you've been invited to answer, and they will pop up on the screen when they come about, but please do let us know if you don't see them at any point. We ask you just to remain on mute throughout this presentation part of the session, and then again, we'll open that up again when the Q&A session starts. And just for anyone that does need a transcript, there's a live transcript button at the bottom of the Zoom panel that you can click on to have subtitles for the session. Next slide, please. Thank you. And just a reminder, we're the Big Give. As you know, we're running this Christmas challenge and we're so excited to have you guys all on board. And we're hoping we raise over £200 million for thousands of great causes through the power of match funding. And we're hoping to raise even more money through this Christmas challenge. And we can't wait to start that. But without further ado, I'll pass straight on to Rachel and Caitlin.
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. Please do introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know who you are, what organizations you're from. Very nice to see some familiar names from the Women and Girls Match Fund in spring. So hi, everyone. And thanks for joining. We're IG Advisors. We're a strategy and management consulting firm, and we work with the philanthropy, business, and nonprofit sectors for social and environmental change. And a lot of our work is focused on fundraising and women and girls organizations. I'm Caitlin. I have been at IG for about 1.5 years. And as I said, if you joined us for the Women and Girls Match Fund trainings in spring, you'll probably be very familiar with my face and voice by now. And today I'm joined by Rachel, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yes. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here again as well. I'm looking at the chat. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names. So thanks for introducing yourself and for having us back. I'm the managing director of IG. I've been here for 6 years, and my background before IG was in fundraising. So I'm very familiar with the ins and outs of what it takes to do good fundraising and be a good fundraiser as well. So really thrilled and honored to be here.
Amazing. So we're going to very quickly introduce the objectives for the day, and then we're going to jump straight into a short presentation, basically recapping some of our key recommendations for women and girls organizations when it comes to connecting with your donors during Christmas time. We're then going to go into an Ask Me Anything Q&A session, where we'd love for you to raise your hands, unmute, and let us know all your burning questions about your match funding campaigns, and then we'll close and wrap up the session. And so by the end of this session, we will all fully understand how women and girls organizations can connect with their donors this Christmas, and obviously during the cost of living crisis. And you'll have a chance to ask us all your burning questions. But before we jump into our presentation, we would love to hear about how you're currently feeling when it comes to communicating the importance of supporting women and girls to your donors this Christmas. So there should be a little poll that's popped up on screen. So please just take a couple of seconds to vote. Do you feel super confident, know what you're doing, ready to get started, could be on the Q&A panel today? Or do you feel not comfortable at all? Please help. So a couple of seconds, and then let's see the results. Okay, so we have quite a mix. So some of you are feeling pretty comfortable, which is great news. Some of you are feeling like you know the basics, and then we have some people who are slightly less comfortable. So this will be a really great session where you can ask those questions and we can make sure we take you from the I know the basics pretty comfortable to feeling super confident and ready to go. Okay, so before jumping into the Ask Me Anything section of this session, we just wanted to reiterate how exciting this opportunity is. Joining the Christmas challenge, it's such an opportunity for your organization to boost its profile, to test what works. So experimenting with different social media channels, different communication channels and events, and what messaging will really resonate with your different donor audiences. And we always find that these campaigns are a great opportunity to just stop and take a step back and reflect on what image do we and what positioning do we want for our organization. And then it's also an exciting opportunity for the sector. So there are so many really important women and girls causes and really amazing organizations. So it's a great opportunity to raise awareness about the work that we're all doing across the sector, to influence narratives. So do we want to continue with narratives which can be problematic, which can fall into stereotypical tropes? Or can we use this as an opportunity to set the narrative and that we want to share, and to amplify women's voices and set an example for how people speak about our work? So how to make the case at Christmas and connect with donors when there are so many causes and organizations looking for support during this time of year. First of all, fundraise at the intersection. So we really recommend working out if there are any ways your work overlaps with other causes that are really popular this Christmas. So does your work help get women off the streets and into a warm, safe space during the cold winter months? Does it help provide women with food, access to hygiene products? Does it support them with mental health and Christmas cheer? So work out if there are any ways your work overlaps with the causes that are on people's minds during this time. Tailor your messaging. So tailor your case for need and support to make sure it's speaking to those areas that are on people's minds related to the cost of living, the cold winter months. Do your research, and we're going to come back to this in a couple of slides, but there's a lot of information out there and a lot of evidence to make the case for supporting women and girls this Christmas. And leverage the milestone. Christmas is such a great milestone for fundraising. You have the urgency of supporting people during this time period. You have the culture of giving back and wanting to give during the Christmas period. You have the forward-looking new year, fresh start. There are so many really interesting ways to frame your messaging and really leverage this moment. Use your networks. So one of the things we heard a lot from the spring campaign was that often fundraising teams are very small, but you know a lot of people, and the people you know, a lot of people know a lot of people. And in addition to this feeling of wanting to give back during Christmas time, this could be a financial interest, but it could also be just wanting to give back by advocating for your charity that they're really, really passionate about. And then get creative and have fun with it. There are so many ways that you can get creative with this Christmas theme and festive period. which leads nicely onto this example we wanted to share with you. And this is actually a case study that was shared during the I Wish I Thought of That event, which is all about showcasing fundraising ideas, and we've linked to it. So when you receive this presentation after the training, do make sure that you check out the links, because there's some really interesting analysis. But Bloody Good Period, they're a UK-based charity that works to achieve menstrual equity, and they deliver menstrual supplies, education. They work to remove the stigma around menstruation. And in 2018, they launched their first festive period Christmas campaign that raised over £17,000. And it's a really great example of getting creative and having fun and leveraging that Christmas milestone. So as we said, they had a lot of fun with the campaign. They used a play on words. So they were talking about the festive period. They had the hashtag #FlowHoHo. They had a great reach. So they used their networks. They reached out to social media influencers and gave them stockings and asked them to share photos, filling the stockings with the campaign hashtag. They had a really nice tone of voice, so they knew the audience they were targeting, and they decided to use a kind of informal, friendly tone of voice to speak and connect with that audience. So obviously that might not be the tone of voice for everyone, but the point here is they knew their audience and how to speak to them. And they also leveraged the urgency. So, you know, they were emphasizing help people through this kind of festive Christmas period. And one of the great things about this Christmas challenge campaign is you have the added urgency of getting funding in between a certain time period. And obviously we know that for some organizations, that more fun, lighthearted approach might not feel like the right approach. It might not feel sensitive to what you're working on. But as we said earlier, there is a lot of research about how the cost of living crisis is affecting women and girls. And so you really can make a great case for need. And we've included, as you can see, a little box of resources for you all to check out. But we know from the research that's available that the cost of living crisis will have a greater impact on women due to the fact that there are so many structural inequalities already in place. Certain groups are expected to be hit harder, so people with disabilities, women trying to flee domestic abuse, communities of colour. So do your research, and there's a lot available online, and work out what evidence you can use to make your case. And also, it's worth remembering that there are lots of compounding issues at the moment. So you have the discrimination and the structural inequalities. You also have the pandemic and now the cost of living crisis on top of that. And when we are trying to connect with donors and putting our message out there, let's think about how we're framing things to really emphasize the fact that this isn't a women and girls issue. This is an issue of all of these structural inequalities, compounding crises, and trying to make our narrative a narrative that, as far as possible, kind of avoids those more problematic, disempowering tropes. So that was a very quick whistle-stop presentation of some of our key recommendations for making the case during this Christmas cost of living crisis period. But we would love to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. We would love to go into an Ask Me Anything session, which is what it sounds like. We would like to hear any of your questions, any of your concerns, anything you'd like to share with us or ask us about your campaign. This is very much your space and your time. So please feel free to drop any questions in the chat, or you can also use the raise hand function if you'd like to speak to us directly.
Yes, and yeah, we're counting on you to sort of ask the questions to make the most out of this session. So please don't be shy about raising your hand or asking any questions. I guess so. We can start off with a question. If no one has a question yet, we can start off with maybe something to think about is how important do you think data is important when you're trying to frame a story in terms of like X percentage of women maybe being abused and this becomes harder? Is data really important to back up those sort of stories when you are going out to donors and also sort of just your marketing material?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's, as we said, there's a lot of research out there at the moment about how the cost of living crisis and other issues this winter is expected to impact women and girls. And I'm sure that all of these charities, you also have statistics about your work generally. So, you know, you do want to make your case for need and highlight this is the problem. But we would also recommend, as we said, thinking about the wider opportunity in terms of what narrative do we want to be putting out there? How do we want to be framing this? You know, this is an issue. Yeah, how do we want to be framing the narrative? How do we want people to be seeing our organization and the people that we're working with? I don't know if you'd add anything, Rachel.
No, I think that's totally right, and it's such an important point. And the only thing I might add is just building off what you said, Caitlin, around the case for need and how so often we in fundraising, it's not easy, but it's more straightforward to make the case for need than it is to make the case for support. And so I just wanted to highlight the difference between those two elements. So the case for need, let's say you work with women who are experiencing homelessness, just as an example. So the case for need would be, you know, please help us this winter because so many women are going to be facing or at risk of homelessness than ever before because of cost of living. And it's a need-based message. But that's not enough. That's just about the need. What you need to do to fundraise is make the case for support, which is an added layer on top of that, which is why you, literally, you as a person, as a human being, and you as a team of human beings, and your brand and your organization, why are you the one that they should invest in to address that need and to address that challenge? So it's a little bit, I don't want to use the word selfish or self-centered, but it's a little bit, it is a little bit like that. It's a little bit of centering you and your team and your value add in relation to that need and problem and stating that explicitly, because there are a lot of organizations working in similar areas. And it's I don't mean to get overly competitive with this, but I think that losing the case for support or not addressing that explicitly is a very tricky position to be in. That's what I'd say.
Great. Thanks. Really great sort of information there which I should take away. There is a question for Beth here. Is there anything about the Big Give rebrand we should be considering as part of our narrative?
So yeah, as most or some of you may know, Big Give have now rebranded and we're slowly starting to roll this out. You might see it currently on our social medias. It looks a bit different. The Christmas Challenge logo looks different, and we're hoping to slowly roll this out on our website as well. Ideally, we want this some of the key pages anyway ready for the Christmas Challenge, but when that comes about, we will notify all charities to say these are some of the pages that are going to look different. You might want to notify your donors that the website looks like this now, but again, we're still confirming the exact date of that website relaunch. So at the moment, I would say in terms of your narrative, you don't need to focus on that, but we will inform you of any changes that are coming, things to be aware of, and things you might want to incorporate into comms at the time. But for now, I would say no.
I had a question as well from Lisa, one for actually putting back again, but I can take it as well.
Sorry, Sahil, you might want to put your mic.
Sorry. This is from Lisa. We received a pledge from a champion as well as champion funds. Will this be correct, or should we be looking to increase our pledge funds if this is a duplication? I'm happy to answer that. Would you want to take that? Great. Yeah, so because of the way the Christmas Challenge is structured, the charities secure pledges and then we get champion funds. We've, because for charities under £1 million in part of the Women and Girls Match Funds of the Christmas Challenge, we've offered the pledge funds as well as the champion funds. So basically all of your match funds are coming from every year from the DCMS funding. So you don't need to worry about that or adding more pledges in. All of the match funds come, if your charity is under £1 million in income, all of your match funds are coming from us, and you just need to focus on getting those donations in. There's a question from, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a question from Beth. Nice to have a matching name there. But we use Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter to communicate to IG. Are there any other platforms you would recommend?
Yeah, my recommendation, and I think something we always recommend at IG is first target the lowest hanging fruit. So, you know, think about what platforms are the people who are currently kind of big fans of your work. What are they currently using? And we would kind of prioritize those channels where you know that you can reach people who are interested and passionate about what you're doing. So we would prioritize those first, and that could be social media, it could be email, it could be through events, it could be through your newsletter, it could be your website. But if you know where you're currently getting most engagement, we would always recommend start there. And especially because we know that a lot of organizations have a quite small fundraising teams and limited capacity, we would say prioritize those, and then, you know, feel free, as we said, this is an exciting opportunity to experiment. So if you're interested in branching out and trying new platforms and you have the capacity for that, then, you know, go for it. I don't know if you'd add anything, Rachel.
No, I love that. But I agree. I think it's best to do a small number of platforms really well than to spread yourself too thin just for the sake of it, or just to meet some arbitrary target of we need to be here, when if your audience isn't there, then it's a little bit of a tree falling in the woods that no one hears. So I would go to the woods where people are at.
I love that imagery. So good.
I think that kind of answers Natalie's question as well, but I guess in addition to that, have you got any tips for approaching or encouraging new donors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I can start, then maybe Rachel can jump in. So one of the things that springs to my mind is what we were talking about using your networks. So obviously there are the people that you know who maybe they're donating to you, maybe they're friends, maybe they're just, you know, interacting with your social media and they can't give now, but they're really passionate about what you do. But you can use those people in your networks to reach more people in your networks and advocate on your behalf. And we would recommend, if you have kind of capacity, make it as easy as possible. You know, you can share example social media posts that they can post to their social pages. You could share example email templates. You know, make it easy for people to advocate, because there are probably so many people in your networks that are so passionate about what you do, and they just need to know that you need their support and this is how they can be of help. So that's what springs to my mind, but I don't know if there's anything else that springs to your mind, Rachel.
No, that's exactly what I would say. Yeah, and everyone starts from, well, most people do start from a small place in terms of a following. So don't let that discourage you too much. Like, the only way you build it is by building these connections. And as Caitlin says, help people help you. Don't get in your own way by making it complicated or a high barrier to entry for people to showcase you on their own platforms, because that's a challenge you don't need to have, and it can build quite organically from there with the right network of ambassadors.
Great, thank you both. So there's a question about, I think probably for me and Sahil here, says this is our first campaign. Could you run through the timelines again? I think we need to get pledges in, but nothing should be donated until the campaign is live. So yeah, just to kind of reiterate what Sahil said, for women and girls charities, with the normal Christmas challenge, normally charities have to collect pledges, which are match funds that you raise through your supporters, and then we pair you with a champion who will add additional match funds to your campaign. But for women and girls charities under £1 million, the pledges and the champion funds are both coming from the DCMS / the Big Give. So you're not required to do anything in regards to those pledges at the moment. We will send you further comms to tell you if there's anything you do need to do. Right now, we're in the marketing phase of the campaign. So you're just prepping to market your campaign, who you're going to approach and so on. And then during the week of the Christmas challenge, that's the 29th of November to the 6th of December, you're seeking to direct supporters to your donation page on the Big Give and raise those donations, and that will be matched through the match funds that you have essentially been promised. So again, please don't get confused between the pledges and champion funds. Just think of them as one big match funding pot and just think of them as the same thing. We have a question from Lena. Says, we use Facebook paid ads, so I'm looking into assigning some budget to promote the campaign to cold audiences using targeting. Do you have any advice around this, specifically about percentage compared to overall target? I'm not sure if Caitlin and Rachel, you have anything about paid ads or...
I can firstly jump in with a disclaimer that we can't install Facebook pixels on individual campaign pages. So if anyone is thinking of using Facebook paid ads and you want to sort of track the conversions and anything like that, what we recommend is that you set up a landing page on your own website, and that then has a link to your Big Give campaign page. Obviously, it's not super clear or super accurate data in terms of how many people are converting into donors, but it does provide some data about how many people are clicking through your ads. But yeah, so the actual conversion of people clicking through ads to actual donations is a bit more tricky. So that's our advice if you want to use Facebook ads and that information. We don't use Facebook ads ourselves as the Big Give, so we have limited advice here as in terms of sort of that area, but we did a social media webinar last week on which also has information about using Facebook ads. I don't know if do you want to jump in here and have any further advice?
Yeah, I have a quick thought, and I will say that I'm not super familiar with the technicalities around ads and conversion rates, so I don't want to speak on that point because that's not my thing. But I would say that something I've seen before is charities over relying on ads rather than other relationship-based techniques to getting their message out there. And I do understand that, and I'm not saying that ads have no place. Of course they do. And if you have the budget for that, it's absolutely something to consider. But if you are working within limited resources, which I imagine most of us or all of us are to some extent, it can be quite tempting to spend money on ads because it's very transactional and it makes it straightforward and it's direct and it feels like momentum. But the conversion rate, Sahil, that you were speaking to is to some extent, it can really fall flat if your audience isn't on Facebook. Do you have a warm community already on Facebook where they see this ad pop up and they would already know enough about you that that would be the thing that gets them over the line? If you have that, then yeah, that's probably quite a strategic investment. If you don't, there are so many ads out there. There's so much noise. I'm not convinced that an ad about giving to a charity would get you the same traction as spending your time and money on developing amazing assets and reaching out to your networks and doing the time to give your ambassadors or your people and their people all the materials they need to help you. So I know it can be tempting to go the transactional ad route, and there is a place for it, but I think it's actually probably a smaller place than the relationship building, like network building, ambassador, assets, influencer route. I know that's more maintenance, but it usually pays more dividends.
And from what we see is that the highest number of donors comes from emails from our campaigns. That's the biggest driver of donors. So really, email is very key, probably the biggest, most important. And not, as Rachel said, there is a place for ads, but it's probably much lower down the pecking order.
Fab, another question here. Do you have platforms that we can use in addition to our own platforms? I'm not 100% sure the platforms might be referring to, so I might need a bit more of a explanation on that one. So if you could pop that in the Q&A somewhere, we can get to that. Eunice says, what happens if you are not able to match fund the total money from pledges and the champion? So yeah, I can take that. So essentially everything you raise during the campaign week, you receive plus that amount matched, obviously up to your certain amount of match funding that you have. So there's no consequence for not reaching your target. You will still receive everything you've raised in those online donations plus that amount matched. You just won't access the remaining amount of match funds. Let me see. Someone from an anonymous question, do you have any suggestions for how to use events for fundraising during Big Give when donations can only be taken on the Big Give page? Probably Sahil.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So what we've seen people do in the past with events, if the event is during the Christmas challenge week itself, what you can have is, for example, you can have donation stations there. So like people roaming with iPads or laptops and just getting people to donate via that way. Or you could create your own QR codes. So there are loads of online tools where you can create your own QR codes to speak and have that around the around your event and letting people to scan the code and then making the donation there. If like the sort of tickets are the donation and your event is during the Christmas challenge week, what you can ask people to do is make a donation on your Big Give campaign page, and then we can show that they'll get a donation receipt by email, and we can use that as their sort of ticket, and you can ask them to check that. And obviously, if they haven't made that, they can make a donation right at the door. So that's my advice for events during the campaign. If you have it holding an event before the campaign starts, it's a bit more trickier. What I normally say is that if you're getting proceeds, it can be donated to your campaign during the Christmas challenge week. It must be donated from someone's personal account. So it can't be from the charity collecting the funds before the Christmas challenge starts and then making a donation to their own campaign. But if you have like an independent fundraiser who's running an event, they can collect their sort of proceeds. And then when the Christmas challenge starts, they can then make that donation for your campaign. The two caveats there would be that that person can't claim gift aid on those donations because there's a collection of donations. And the second thing is I would always consult with your finance team just to make sure everything is shown above board in your accounts.
Great, thanks, Sahil. Matthew says, are we required to have the Big Give Women and Girls Match Fund logo on every post? So the answer to that is no. We provide a Christmas Challenge logo in the resources section of the portal. So if you go to support, go to Christmas Challenge, you'll find all of our Big Give assets. It's completely up to you if you want to use the logo. We do, a lot of charities do use it, and it's good to kind of see everyone using that Christmas Challenge logo. So people can see that it's all connected, but again, it's up to you how you like to design your assets. So the question for IG here, do you have any advice for dealing with sexist, misogynist or transphobic comments that we might receive as organisations that specifically support women? Hopefully this wouldn't happen, but we want to be prepared.
Yes. Oh gosh. I mean, great question. I'm so sorry that you have to ask it. And I really, really hear and feel that. And I think, yeah, you're right to anticipate that as a risk and then figure out how to address that before that happens. And I mean, I don't have an easy, perfect answer for that, but the first two things that come to my mind are one, and I'm sure you are probably already thinking about this, but definitely having a strategy as a team and as yourself to like protect yourself from that, you know, like a self-care and team care strategy, like just having solidarity and feeling like you're not alone in dealing with that bullshit, if I may say, I think is really important, and it's really important. So number one, there's like a little bit of internal planning around how are we gonna like stand shoulder to shoulder with each other if this happens. And then number two, if it does, like I think there's there's probably two elements. Like one, you can ignore some of it or, not steep down to that level if that feels right. Two, you could lean into it and use that as an example to further your case for support, if that feels appropriate or relevant, depending on your cause and your platform and like all of the variables and the risks. And I know there's a lot that goes into this, but if there's a comment that you feel it really illustrates the exact reason why you do need to exist and why you need this funding now, then maybe there's a forum for calling it out. I know that happens quite a lot on social media, is like, maybe you don't need to protect the identity of these people who are trolling you in this way. Maybe you can lean into it and do a bit of strategic public shaming in order to drive more attention to your cause. That's something to consider. Or whether or not like that you can call it out in a big way, or you can have maybe a series of stock responses that you develop in advance so that you don't have to put all the energy in the moment to it, but responses that demonstrate your values, your integrity, your emotional maturity, so that you just, like, thank you so much for your comment. We disagree because of all these very valid reasons. And I can imagine that others reading your response to that would then go, oh, wow, I'm really impressed with the way that they've handled that. So I'm so sorry that this is something that so many people have to deal with, but I guess as much as you can, turn it into an opportunity to shoot it down, to demonstrate your values, to operate with integrity, and to use that to drive more attention and investment to your cause, because this is the exact reason why you need to exist.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And I think just coming back to Rachel's kind of first point about like protecting your mental health and yourself and your team, if you're finding it tiring and draining to be having to respond to these comments, then it's also, protect yourself. And if you feel like this is becoming too much of a drain and it's affecting our well-being and our mental health, then it's also okay to do what you've got to do, if that means like blocking these accounts or you not coming out with such a big response because it's just too much of a toll. Like, also protect yourself and your team, whatever the implication, whatever that means you have to do.
100%.
Thank you both. It's a question from Thami. I think this is from Sahil. I just started at my organization last week. Is there any chance I can look into all the information that has already been organized?
Yes, so if you visit your Christmas Challenge dashboard and you look at the resources section on the right-hand side, it'll have all the resources. It'll have the links to the webinars, and it'll have we've recorded all the webinars on the YouTube channel. So if you click on the webinars resource, you can watch all of the ones that all of the webinars that we've done. There's also an Ask Us Anything session next week. So if you do want to sign up for that, please do sign up for that. We also have our marketing guidebooks, the inspirational guidebooks as well available there, as well as sort of the FAQs and the Christmas Challenge guidelines, and they're all available in your Christmas Challenge dashboard. And yeah, after that, if you do have any further questions, do get in touch with us at hello@give.org.uk and we can help you out.
Thanks. I think we just had a follow-up to the question about the platforms. Is talking about in regards to where we can post our funding campaigns. So I guess potentially other social media platforms or places like that where they can get support or coverage of their campaign potentially. I'm not sure if we have any.
Yeah, I have an initial thought, because I know that I believe the question earlier was in addition to our own platforms, right? So you have obviously your own platforms. Honestly, my first initial response to that is you should probably stick to your own platforms. I'm not sure if anyone else disagrees. Of course, it's great to have media coverage. I'm not saying that there isn't a way to amplify your message, and that does really help. There's no question. But I would the thing that I always go back to is relationships. Like, people give to organizations that they already know and trust, and like, people give to people. So I'm not sure it's worth your time researching platforms where you have no presence or audience and no one knows you. I mean, there's all the usual platforms, of course, all the social ones. I don't know of any magic fundraising platform portal where all the donors are just waiting to give. So unfortunately, I can't give a very neat answer on that front. But I would just start with your people and then their people and their people and their people and do it that way. And I know, again, it's a little bit more high maintenance, but if you don't, I just worry again, it would be a tree in the forest falling and no one hearing it. There's so much noise, good noise and bad noise, but there's a lot of competing messages, let's say, out there, and going onto platforms where you don't have a dedicated or engaged audience and where people don't recognize your brand, unless they do, unless you have a particularly big brand. I'm worried about that. That feels like tricky territory where you might not get the results that you want. That's my initial reaction to that. Do you agree, Big Give team?
I agree with that, and I had an idea as well. Is that a great example we saw a couple of years ago was there's a charity working with pregnant women in Ethiopia, and what they did is they reached out to a UK Ethiopian community organization, asked them to share their campaign amongst their sort of leadership members. And so when you're doing this network mapping, think about, are there sister organizations that sort of have the same sort of overlapping interests, and you can use their platforms and ask them, just it never hurts to ask if they can share your campaign. So it's worth thinking about it that way as well. About in your local community, are there sort of in-person events where it may be appropriate for you to speak and share your campaign, share your work with people there. So yeah, you can think, we always think about digital platforms, but also with the physical world as well. What can you reach out to?
Great. I think there are 2 questions for Big Give. Maybe Sahi can answer the first one. I'll be able to receive donations via check or backs, and the second is about gift aid.
At the moment we can only take donations by card, Google Pay, Apple Pay. We are working on a possible solution where we can basically take transfers and give people donation credits for them to make a donation. We're currently working on that solution. We can't guarantee if it's going to be ready in time for this Christmas challenge. We will keep charities updated if it's a possibility for this campaign, but I don't want to put a hard and fast rule on that. So at the moment, it's going to be card donations only and Google Apple Pay. If that second solution is possible, we'll let you know. But yeah, checks won't be possible in any solution, unfortunately.
Thanks. And just to answer the second question about gift aid, you can get gift aid on donations during the donation journey. Supporters will have the chance to say if their donations gift aid eligible or not. And this is all saved in your donations report in the portal. So if you're collecting donation gift aid yourself, you'll have all of that information accessible to you in order to collect that gift aid, or you can authorize the Big Give to claim for you, and we'll be claiming any gift aid on donations raised on our platform.
That's probably worth highlighting. There's a 3% admin fee on any gift aid if you nominate us to claim gift aid for you.
Thanks, Sile. One question from Eunice. Is it okay to promote your campaign to your existing funders, and what is the best approach? Don't know if you have any thoughts on that, IG?
Yeah, I think definitely, leverage those relationships that are already really strong. And, you can also frame it as an opportunity. So a lot of charities that do these kind of campaigns, they'll have like a total with a target, and they'll update people on the target, and actually getting donations through is a really great way of encouraging more people to donate. So making the most of the nature of the campaign and, saying this donation, if you could support us, it's going to help us with this momentum. We have this target, the urgency, is there anything about this kind of Christmas cost of living period as well, where it's a slightly different case for need that you're proposing to your funders that you want them to support? So those would be kind of my initial ideas, but definitely where you have those strong relationships, really prioritize those.
I would also just quickly add that it's really in your donors' interest to see that you're doing a campaign like this. So I know that, like, maybe reading between the lines, you don't want to bug your funders too much. Maybe they've recently given you money and you don't want to ask them again. And I completely understand that. But two things to that. One, it doesn't have to be another ask if you feel that's not appropriate given the timeline of their previous donation. It could still just be, could you share it with your network, or it could just be an FYI. And even the FYI is useful because most funders, especially big ones, want to know that you are funded by other people too, and that you have smart financial management and you're thinking about resilience and sustainability and diversification and all those other words that we all know. And so if they see that you're taking a proactive approach to building your community and your portfolio of donors, they will probably feel more secure in their donation, and that will kind of increase their trust and confidence in you. So I would absolutely share this with them, even just as an FYI, so that they know you're on top of it.
Fab. I think that's actually all of the questions. So on that note, I think we'll...
Oh, I don't know. I urge you, if you want to do the poll, the last poll.
Yeah, we did one final poll where we just wanted to see how you're feeling now. So there should be a poll coming up on your screen. So after today's session, how are you feeling about communicating your work and connecting with donors this Christmas? So a very quick 2 seconds because we know everyone needs to jump off. Okay, oh, that's great to see. So we've got a number of people feeling significantly better, a lot of you feeling better, and there's no one who's still screaming for help. So that's great news. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure doing these trainings and seeing so many familiar faces and, well, faces, no, but names and new names as well in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Rachel and Caitlin, for doing the session. Great as always. Just a reminder that this webinar has been recorded, so you can share with your team and so on after as well, and we'll make sure the slides are also available. And also, if you do come up with any more questions in the next week, we do have another Ask Me Anything session with the Big Give team. If you do want to join that and ask us another question, that's absolutely fine. But otherwise, we wish you all a great afternoon.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.